Good morning, everybody. It's John Chester, Operations Section Chief, working with Southwest Team 2 here on the Calf Creek and Hermit Peak fires. So today we're going to start with just a kind of a brief overview of the incident, and then we'll get into some specifics of the operations that are going on out there. So yesterday on the eastern zone, or eastern side of the south zone, what we call Branch 1, Division Alpha and Bravo, in there we have 2 repair groups that are working, and then what we call the Alpha Bravo division. And so the repair groups, what they've got going on in there is we've talked about it before, they're going in, they're trying to put the vegetation back over those dozer lines that were created, or hand lines, or the control features that were in place as the fire went through, and we were making attempts to stop it in those locations. So what that really entitles and what it's geared around is controlling the erosion, the runoff, as we move into the monsoonal type conditions later in the month and into next month and over the coming weeks to do that. So it's a top priority, and I know that as we start looking at the stuff on the west side, there's still smoke and fire over there, but we have not taken our eye off of the important work that is being done over here for the repair. And so that is occurring on the private lands where those folks want that work to be completed, in the public lands where it was done. So it is very critical. It's very critical for the watersheds. It's very critical as we get the moisture here, and that exposed dirt that used to have that protective vegetative cover over top of it is exposed to that moisture, that we put stuff back on it. We put the water bars in it so that that water just doesn't pull up and start running like little rivers down those dozer lines. And so a lot of thought process by experts in hydrology and soil. They've looked at that and they've put that plan together, and they've given us the details and the tools to go back out there and start fixing that. Seeding, spreading the native seeds back on those lands or grounds, and just really focusing on trying to do what they can before those monsoonal type moistures come in and start really changing that. So trying to repair the landscape where we did those suppression actions and getting that fixed up. So a lot of good work is still continuing on that piece of the fire. As we come into Branch 15, divisions Charlie, Delta, and Echo, those folks are beginning that same kind of process. They've started backhauling the excess trash and equipment out of there, and are really looking at the same thing, looking at how we go in and the dozer lines and the hand lines where we can fix those that doesn't jeopardize the control feature on the outside where the green edge meets the black edge. To really start focusing on that, putting those water bars in, scattering the brush back over it where we can safely do that, just to get that prepared for the coming weather that hopefully will be here sooner rather than later. And then, the continued to secure those lines, working up into the Elk Mountain area. And then we'll skip over that and we'll jump around into Division India and Juliet, where that stuff is taken off from the Iron Gate and working its way up into the wilderness, into the divide up there where the train opens up, and it's kind of like that bare rocky stuff where we intend to tie into. So that work is continuing up there. And then, so the next piece we'll really focus in on is that Spring Mountain area, and the area that is we now refer to as Division Foxtrot, coming off of Elk Mountain and progressing down towards the 63. And so you guys are, you're likely to see yesterday, the day before, and then going forward, an increase in smoke that's going to be coming out of there. Part of that is the ignitions that have already, and not our ignitions, but where the fire is already back down into. It's got the terrain and those heavier fuel types that it's coming into alignment to. We've got the weather stuff up here that we're coming back into a little drier climate type of deal. So that fire is able to move more freely in there. And that is what's also kicking us off to begin these firing ignitions or operations to bring that fire down, to control that fire edge as it starts coming up. And so there's been some questions about why the hand ignitions or the ignitions that we're doing are different than the natural fire or the fire that's in there already, and the difference, why that could be better. And so just a little analogy. I think most people, and for children, don't play with matches. We don't want that. But for the adults, if you think about taking a match and you light it and you hold that match with the flame up, it takes a little bit of time for that match to burn down to where your fingers are. And if you were to hold it until it burned, you'd have a little bit of time before that happens with that flame head being up. Now you take that same match and you light it and you hold it sideways and you allow that fire to flank towards your fingers. That takes a little more time for that to occur, or a little less time for that to occur. It wants to travel on that flat plane a little quicker to your fingers. Take that same match and you hold it upside down where the flame is on the bottom and it moves to your fingers. You drop that match a little quicker, right? So the same kind of principle applies out on the landscape. And so as we look at Bear Creek, the South Fork of Bear Creek and Bear Creek Canyons, and those canyons that are aligned there, they're kind of aligned east to west. So we have north and south facing slopes in there that the fire is making those transitions from the south side coming up the north side to our control line. If the fire is allowed to back down Bear Creek or Bear Canyon and Bear Creek and the South Fork there, and it gets that slope reversal where it's come from the south side and it's starting to come up that north side, left to start at the bottom and burn its way to the top, that's going to happen much more rapid and with much more severity as it does that. And so the intent of starting at the top with our firing operations is to light that fire, the line off there, let that fire back down under more controlled and less severe conditions or results. So if we can back that fire off down there and slow that progression as that makes it what we call slope reversal coming from that south facing slope across the drainage and then up that north side, it allows us to regulate the heat intensity as that fire would be coming up to our lines. And so it gives us better options for holding. It's not just making a head run to our lines where our folks are strung out on it and holding. So that hopefully that will help people understand a little bit of why we're doing what we're doing. And we've talked about just kind of staying up with that fire as it's moving along. We're getting to the stage now where we want to get ahead of it. We want to get ahead of it and allow that fire the time to back down and have a bigger buffer in there as that fire does make those transitions. And that will be true as we work along this entire division Foxtrot and as we go into hotel. And at a given point, and those folks out there on the ground, we had a big meeting about it this morning. Those guys are out there every morning on their truck hoods. They're continuing to evaluate those plans. They're continuing to evaluate those processes so that they have everybody working on the same common operating picture. They all know what they're going to be doing, what this group is going to be doing, and how it affects the groups over I won't say over here, over there, but so how the group in Division F, what they do, how it affects the groups in Division Hotel. So as it comes down that dozer line, we're doing this, so this group over here needs to do this. And that changes, as the time goes by and it progresses. They have those primary, alternate, and contingency plans so that when this happens, we do this. When this happens, we're going to do this. And I know that's kind of vague in the sense, but it really is up to those folks out there on the ground to say, hey, we got fire coming up here. We need to take it just a little bit farther, or we can hold up. And it's just that controlled pace and that organization where those guys, it's choreographed. They know what they're going to be doing to best handle that situation as that fire moves around on the landscape out there. So they've got a good plan. They've started executing that plan. And, we'll over the next, few days, 3 to 6 or 7, maybe longer as that plan's implemented, you will see increased smoke. You will see, you'll see the helicopters and stuff flying as needed. And, it really is, it's coming together. And this is probably one of the last real focal points and the interest that people are going to have. And I know that, and I want to go back to this too, but there's still a lot of focus points over here going forward. And so we haven't lost sight of that. And so just wanted to make that clear. But with that, I think that's probably it for the update for today. We'll get back with you guys tomorrow and let you know how things have progressed. To add on to that, we are beefing up the nighttime folks that are going to be out there so that there's a larger group of folks covering that area and ensuring things are going on. And those firing operations likely to start taking place in the evening times as well if the conditions allow for that. And that also allows us a better opportunity to better regulate the heat and severity and intensity of the firing operations out there. So those folks, like I said, they've got a really good plan. and they have begun to implement that, and you will see the effects of that in smoke production over the next few days. So with that, continue. If you see stuff in other areas of the fire that you're concerned about, call that PIO hotline. Those folks will get in touch with our communications folks, and we can send people out to look at those and ground truth what you're seeing and making sure that things are still good. And then between after those hours, so you can call 911, and those folks will get us the information, and we can go out and handle those calls. So we appreciate the comments. We appreciate your time, and continue to provide us that feedback.